The call came just after 3. I was finishing a website mock-up, fingers stiff from endless tweaks, when my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. I nearly let it ring out until a calm male voice said, "Is this Emma Carter? I'm calling from Holy Trinity Church. We have your daughter here." My throat closed, panic clawing my chest. "Lily?" I asked, already standing. "She's safe. A couple dropped her off a short while ago. They said you were dealing with a family emergency." My stomach turned. Lily was supposed to be at preschool, not in the care of strangers at a church in Boston, Massachusetts. I didn't ask any more questions. I just grabbed my keys and ran. The drive blurred, heart racing like a trapped bird. I barely remembered traffic lights or the way my knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. My only focus was getting to her. When I finally pulled up in front of the church, I couldn't breathe properly. A woman guided me through the narthex to a quiet side room. And there she was, my little girl, sitting on a bench that seemed too big for her, her legs dangling, clutching a foam cup of cocoa with both hands. When she saw me, her face lit up, then folded, eyes wet with betrayal. She jumped down and ran straight into my arms. "Mommy!" I dropped to the floor and held her as tightly as I could. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" My voice came out in pieces, shattered by fear. She shook her head but whispered, "They said you didn't want me anymore." My chest cracked, their venom searing my soul. 2 days ago, my father had said it so casually over the phone, voice cold as a blade. "You chose money over family. Don't be surprised when family stops choosing you." I thought it was emotional blackmail. I didn't think they'd go this far, to steal my child's trust. I cradled her face. "I want you more than anything, Lily. You didn't do anything wrong." "Okay, nothing." She nodded against me, her grip not loosening, clinging to my promise. The priest approached and handed me a folded note. No signature, just 6 words. "Until she learns what matters most," a taunt in my mother's scrawl. I didn't cry. I carried my daughter out to the car. Her head rested on my shoulder like it had when she was a baby. She didn't let go, and neither did I. By the time I clicked her seatbelt into place, one thing was crystal clear. This wasn't just a sick message. It was war, and I'd fight to the end. Growing up in the Carter household meant learning early where you stood and where you didn't, a hierarchy carved in silence. I was the oldest, the reliable one, the fixer, mending their messes while they adored her spark. Ava, on the other hand, was the light, the girl with big eyes, big dreams, and a magnetic way of making you believe in her, even when she'd done nothing to earn it. When she failed biology in 9th grade, my mother said, "She's creative, not academic." When I got into MIT on scholarship, my father asked if I had a fallback plan, his doubt a constant sting. Every win I earned was expected. Every loss of hers was softened, blamed on the world not understanding her vision. Her vision changed with the seasons. At 21, she wanted to open a vegan cafe. By 24, it was a boutique perfume line. None of them made it past the 3-month mark, but Ellen and Mark always showed up with open wallets, their disappointment carefully reserved only for me. 1 month ago, she invited me to lunch at a place that looked more like a spa brochure than a restaurant. She ordered champagne before I sat down. "I've got something big this time, Em," she said, eyes shining, her grin masking desperation. "A luxury skincare lounge, high-end facials, botanical therapy, CBD-infused masks. It's going to blow up. I just need $15,000, 0 cents to secure the lease." I laughed. I actually laughed. "Ava, are you serious? That's your 3rd one in 3 years and I'm still broke from your last flop." Her smile faded. "This one's different. I'm working with an influencer. She's got 1 million followers." "No, I didn't raise my voice." I didn't need to. "I'm not doing this again. I have a child to raise, a business to run." She stared at me like I'd spat in her drink. "You've changed," she said coldly. "You used to care about family." Her words a calculated jab. That same night my father called. No hello, just, "I hear you're withholding help again." His tone a veiled threat. It wasn't a request, it was a warning. One I didn't take seriously until they took Lily. 1 week after that lunch, Ava showed up at my house with a folder of Frappuccino and the smug certainty of someone who thought no was a soft maybe, her eyes glinting with greed. "I figured showing you the numbers would help," she said, sliding the folder across my kitchen counter like we were in a boardroom. Lily was napping upstairs. I didn't want a scene. The folder was filled with mock-ups, social media projections, a floor plan sketch. She had already picked out eucalyptus-scented towels. "Ava," I said gently, "this looks nice, but I'm not in a position to invest." "Not after you burned me twice." Her jaw tightened. "It's not an investment, it's a loan. I'll pay you back in 3 months tops." "I'm a single mom," I said quietly, "not a bank." Her smile vanished. She stood, smoothing out her blazer like she hadn't just thrown her dignity on my counter. "It's always about your daughter, your grief, your struggle. You act like you're the only one who's ever had it hard." Her spite echoing their favoritism. "I act like someone who's still standing after having everything ripped away. That's not selfish. That's survival." She left without saying goodbye. The next morning I got a text from my mom. "You know how hard your sister is trying. Maybe show a little compassion," guilt dripping from every word. Then a call from my dad. "If your mother gets sick from this stress, that's on you." A threat that chilled me. 2 days later, radio silence. No good mornings, no weekend check-ins, no "Lily looked so cute in her Easter dress" texts. Just an empty inbox and an eerie kind of quiet that made me check my phone more than I should have. A calm before their storm. I thought that silence was the punishment, that they'd cut me off to make a point. I was wrong. The silence wasn't the punishment. It was the setup. It was raining hard that Thursday, the sky mirroring my unease. I remember because I had left Lily's yellow rain boots in the car by mistake, and I'd been kicking myself for it all morning. I was deep into a UI design project, my focus fraying under their shadow, when the school number flashed on my phone. I answered immediately. "Hi, Miss Carter," the secretary said. Did someone new get added to Lily's pickup list?" My stomach dropped, fear gripping my heart. "No," I said, already standing. "Why?" "She was signed out about 30 minutes ago. The system flagged the pickup as approved, but I didn't recognize the names. They had the family authorization code from her file." I didn't wait to hear the rest. I grabbed my keys and ran, my world narrowing to her safety. The drive to the school was a blur of honking horns and wild, scattered thoughts. At the front office, the secretary explained that an older couple, my parents obviously, had claimed there was a family emergency. Their deception, a knife in my back. She'd recognized them from previous pickups and didn't question it. I called their phones, straight to voicemail. I tried the landline, nothing. Ava, too, no one picked up. The house was empty. The neighbors hadn't seen them. By 5, I was calling hospitals. By 6, I was pacing with the phone in my hand, trying not to throw it, my dread a living thing. And then the call came. A quiet, steady voice. "Is this Emma Carter? I'm Father James at Holy Trinity Church. I believe your daughter's here with us." A beacon in their darkness. 15 minutes later, I burst through the church doors, soaked and breathless. Lily was sitting on a bench in the lobby, holding a plastic cup of cocoa, her cheeks blotchy from crying, her innocence tarnished by their lies. She ran to me the second she saw me. I dropped to my knees and held her like I'd never let go. "Are you hurt?" I whispered, my soul aching for her pain. She shook her head. "They said, you needed to learn what matters." Words that fueled my fury. The priest approached quietly and handed me a folded note, 6 words written in my mother's handwriting. "You'll understand when you choose family again." A challenge I'd meet head on. I stared at the paper, my hand trembling. Lily clutched my coat and wouldn't let go. The rage didn't come right away. First came the stillness, then the certainty. They'd crossed a line. I couldn't let them step back over, not after this unforgivable act. Officer Thompson didn't sugarcoat it. "This isn't just a bad judgment call," she said, flipping through her notepad. "It's child endangerment, Miss Carter, plain and simple." I sat across from her at the station, my resolve hardening with every word. Lily curled up beside me with a stuffed bunny someone from the front desk had handed her. My voice felt thin, like it belonged to someone else, raw from their treachery. I told the officer everything. How my parents had taken Lily without my knowledge, how they used outdated authorization codes to bypass the school's safeguards, a plot they'd woven with malice. How they'd left her at a church with nothing but a change of clothes and a note, abandoning her to hurt me. When I stopped talking, Officer Thompson simply said, "Let's get the report filed." That night, I barely slept. Lily refused to leave my side, and I couldn't bring myself to move either. Her fear a constant reminder of their crime. The following morning, a social worker from Child Protective Services arrived to assess our situation. She was kind but firm. I understood. They had to check everything now because someone had failed my daughter, a failure I'd make them pay for. By the end of the week, Noah had moved into our guest room. He brought groceries, changed the light bulbs I didn't realize had gone out, and handled school pickup while I met with a lawyer. Claire Evans came highly recommended, and from the first moment we sat down, I knew why. She didn't flinch at the words family and police report being in the same sentence. "You're not overreacting," she said after reading the incident file. "You're protecting your child. The law is on your side." Still, I felt the weight of it, the agony of battling my kin. Filing charges against your own parents isn't something you prepare for, but they hadn't just crossed a boundary, they'd dismantled one, and I'd never let it happen again, and I was done rebuilding things for them. After the police report was filed, everything slowed down, but never really stopped. Lily still clung to me at night, her trust bruised by their deceit. Noah kept the house running while I handled meetings and interviews. Claire warned me the process could take months, so I filled the waiting with purpose. I began documenting everything: texts, voicemails, screenshots, dates. Every scrap of interaction with my parents, or Ava, I saved, a shield against their lies. One evening, while organizing paperwork for Claire, I opened the fireproof box that held Daniel's estate documents. It had been years since I touched them. I thought everything had already been handled, but in a manila folder near the back, I found a property deed I didn't recognize. It was a small plot of land, nothing big, just a lakeside parcel Daniel's grandmother had left for Lily in her will. It wasn't worth a fortune, but it had sentimental value, and it was supposed to be hers. Except it wasn't anymore. The deed had been transferred out of Lily's name 3 months ago. Sold. Signed by Mark and Ellen as trustees of her inheritance. I stared at the signatures, not breathing, as the realization hit. A theft that ignited my wrath. They sold it. They took something that belonged to my daughter and liquidated it without ever telling me, a violation of her future. I dug deeper and found the transaction details. The buyer's name was vague, some holding company, but the transfer memo referenced a payment wired directly to a business account under Ava's name. They used Lily's inheritance to fund her skincare lounge. A despicable act I'd never forgive. I sat on the floor surrounded by documents, shaking from the inside out. They hadn't just crossed legal lines. They had violated something sacred. They'd taken from a child who had already lost her father. And now they wanted to teach me a lesson I'd make them regret. I put the papers back in order, added them to the case file, and sent Claire an email before the adrenaline wore off. The courtroom felt colder than I expected. Not physically, just in the way every sound echoed, and every glance held weight, a reckoning for their sins. Claire sat beside me, calm and composed, while I clutched the folder that had become the quiet record of my family's betrayal, proof of their heartless scheme. Mark and Ellen sat across the aisle with their attorney, stiff and expressionless. My mother wore a gray suit too big at the shoulders, her face a facade of virtue. My father didn't look at me at all, his guilt too heavy to meet my gaze. When the judge called our case, I stood. My hands didn't shake. Not anymore. My strength forged in their fire. Claire began with the abandonment report. How Lily had been taken from school without my knowledge, delivered to a church, and left there with nothing but a note, a calculated act of vengeance. She passed the paper to the judge, who read it silently. lips pressed into a hard line. Then came the documents. The property deed, the sale confirmation, the payment transfer memo, all of it laid out with precise, painful clarity, each page a condemnation. I watched as the judge flipped through the papers, pausing when she reached the line that named Lily as the original beneficiary of the land. "I'd like to note," Claire said, "that the funds from that sale were funneled into a failed business venture run by the respondent's younger daughter, Ava Carter, a theft that robbed my daughter's legacy." My mother's attorney stood. "Your Honor, my clients acted in good faith. They were trying to provide for the family as a whole. Their actions were rooted in concern for their granddaughter's emotional stability given Miss Carter's—" A defense that rang hollow. The judge held up a hand. She turned back to me. "Miss Carter, do you have anything you'd like to say?" I looked at my parents, their masks slipping under my stare. They didn't protect Lily from instability. They caused it. They stole from her, abandoned her, and tried to spin it as love. This wasn't a mistake, it was a decision, one they'd answer for. The judge didn't respond right away. She simply nodded once, then looked down at the file in front of her. "I find sufficient grounds for the immediate suspension of contact between the respondents and the minor child. Further visitation will require family counseling and court review." No one moved. The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was hollow, a grave for their control. The order came through 2 days after the hearing. Full custody protection, no contact from Mark or Ellen unless approved by the court and preceded by mandatory therapy. The paper felt lighter than it should have. It didn't undo what they did, but it gave me room to breathe. A triumph born of pain. Claire called it a clean win. I called it survival. Ava never showed, fleeing like a coward. She hadn't returned a single message from anyone since the hearing notice. Noah said he heard from someone at his office that she was spotted boarding a bus headed east with 2 oversized duffels and a new hair color. I didn't care where she went. I just hoped she didn't leave a trail of broken people behind her again. Lily started sleeping through the night again, her spirit slowly healing. The nightmares came less often, and when they did, she no longer screamed. She would just crawl into bed next to me and whisper, "I'm okay now," as if convincing herself, her courage my guiding light. But one night, as I tucked her in, she looked up at me and asked softly, "Do Grandma and Grandpa still love me?" The question hit like a bruise forming under the skin, slow and deep, a scar from their malice. I knelt beside her bed and brushed her hair back. "I think they don't know how to love the right way," I said. "But that doesn't mean you did anything wrong." She nodded, her lips pressed together like she was afraid her feelings might spill out if she moved too much. "I love you the right way," I added, holding her hand, a vow etched in my soul, "the kind that keeps you safe." That seemed to settle something in her because she turned over and hugged her stuffed rabbit tight, breathing slow and even. After she fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the stack of unopened mail. Noah had gone back to his place the week before, promising to be on call for anything. I believed him. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty anymore. I could feel something returning, something steady, something honest, a sanctuary we'd reclaimed. But the past wasn't finished with us yet. I didn't expect to see him again, not that soon, but there he was, Mark Carter, standing on my front porch with his shoulders slumped and a worn duffel bag in his hand, a broken man begging for mercy. It had been 2 weeks since the court order. I almost didn't open the door. "Emma," he said, voice lower than I'd ever heard it. "We lost the house. Your mother's staying with Jane, her pride shattered like their lies." He didn't look like the man who used to bark orders across the dinner table or lecture me about respect. He looked smaller somehow, as if the weight of everything had finally settled into his bones. "I just need a place to crash for a few nights, until I figure things out." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. I didn't want Lily to hear any of this, to face his shame. "After everything you did," I said, keeping my voice even, "you show up here." "I made mistakes," he muttered. "We thought we were helping Ava." "Helping the family," a plea that rang false. You left my daughter at a church, I said, sharper now. Your actions a wound that won't heal. And you want me to open my door like nothing happened. His face tightened. We didn't think you'd go this far, blaming me for their ruin. The door creaked open behind me. Lily peeked out, her eyes wide, fear replacing her fragile trust. When she saw him, she shrank back and whispered, I don't want him in our house. That was it. That was the line I'd never let anyone cross. I turned to her and nodded gently. It's okay, sweetie. Go back inside. I'll be right there. Then I faced him again. You need to leave now. My words a final stand. His jaw flexed like he wanted to argue, but something in my face must have stopped him. He stepped back slowly, then turned and walked down the steps. I watched until he disappeared around the corner. When I came back inside, Lily was already curled on the couch, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her safety my only priority. I sat beside her and pulled a blanket over us both. She didn't ask what he wanted. She didn't have to. I knew what she needed from me, and this time I gave it without hesitation, a shield against their poison. By spring, we were somewhere new. The apartment wasn't big, but it was bright and quiet, just 2 blocks from Lily's school in Somerville, a refuge we'd won. She loved walking there each morning, her little backpack bouncing with each step. I loved seeing her laugh again, real, unguarded joy, a light they couldn't steal. We had dinner with Noah and his husband every Sunday. They brought board games, I brought dessert, and Lily called them her favorite uncles. No one talked about courtrooms or grandparents or what we'd left behind. Just stories and second helpings and soft good nights. I unpacked slowly. I wanted this place to feel earned, a home forged from our fight. One evening, Lily asked if we could decorate her wall with something special. Together, we painted a small wooden sign. She picked the words. I helped her trace the letters. Real family shows up. A truth born from our scars. It hung above her bed, crooked but perfect. That night, she curled into me after I read her favorite story, the one about the brave girl and the quiet lion. Her breathing slowed, her hand resting against my side. Warm and trusting, a bond they'd never touch. I stared at the sign above us, the brush strokes uneven but clear. Everything we'd lost, we were rebuilding. Not from what used to be, but from what we chose, a future free of their chains.